Remember the World Wide Web? I mean, that name alone, it promised so much, didn't it? A single connected world, a digital space with no borders. Well, that dream is changing, and it's changing fast. Today, we're going to dig into how that vision of one global internet is cracking apart and turning into something completely different. All right, let's get into it. This quote just nails the feeling of that time. Right after the Soviet Union collapsed, there was this incredible optimism. This idea that if we all just connect our economies and our technology, huge wars would become, well, just irrational. I mean, why would you break a system that benefits everyone? And the internet, it was the poster child for this new globalized world. So here's the basic roadmap for what we're talking about today. We started out in the 90s with this amazing dream of a World Wide Web. Then, around the 2010s, the system got hit with one geopolitical shock after another. And that lands us right where we are today, in what our source material calls the patchwork internet. Okay, let's start at the beginning with that original, really powerful vision, the dream of one single borderless web. I mean, the name itself, World Wide Web, was basically the mission statement, right? It was built from the ground up to be a network where data, money, and ideas could just flow. The core belief, which everyone from Silicon Valley to Washington bought into, was that all this connectivity would actually help smooth over political fights. But, well, that dream, that whole system, it started to come under some serious stress. So let's talk about how the cracks in that global foundation really started to show. And look, it wasn't just one thing. It was this cascade of shocks, one hitting right after the other. We're talking trade wars, a global pandemic that shattered everything, supply chains just breaking apart, sanctions, and of course, actual conflict. The combined effect of all this was that the old belief that the world would just sort of fix itself, that just vanished. And the internet, it wasn't immune. It took on all of that pressure. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this slide shows the huge shift in how we think about running the internet. For decades, it was this neutral, technical thing. Decisions were slow, everyone had to agree, and the whole system just assumed things were stable. But now, it's treated like a strategic political battleground. Decisions are made fast, based on national interest, and the goal isn't to assume stability, it's to manage instability. That's a massive, massive change. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The basic technology, the fiber optic cables, the routers, the core code, it's pretty much the same. What's changed completely is the world around it. The political and economic environment is a totally different beast now. So this brings us to where we are today, a reality that this source calls the new Iron Curtain, which has given us this patchwork internet. Okay, so the core idea to grasp here is internet sovereignty. Basically, governments have stopped seeing the internet as this global community space. Now they see it as critical national infrastructure, just like their power grids, their railways, or their shipping ports. And what does that mean? It means it's subject to national laws and national security first and foremost. And the result of all this is what we're calling the patchwork internet. It's a tricky concept. On the surface, everything is still connected. You can still send an email from Germany to Japan, right? But underneath, the networks are becoming legally incompatible. Your data can't just flow freely anymore. It's being blocked and redirected by this messy, conflicting web of local rules. What's so wild is that this new Iron Curtain isn't a physical wall you can see. It's invisible, and it's woven into the very fabric of the internet. So routing decisions aren't just about what's fastest anymore, they're about avoiding legal trouble. Data localization laws are forcing information to stay inside a country's borders. Even cloud computing and encryption standards are getting splintered by all these different national rules. Okay, so that's the problem, and it sounds pretty messy, I know. But what's the solution? How can companies and their developers actually navigate this new fractured world? The source material is super clear on this point. Just sitting around and hoping things go back to the good old days of the open web, that's not a strategy. The only real path forward is to accept that this is the new normal and start building your systems with fragmentation in mind from day one. So, this leads to 5 key strategies for building systems that can actually survive this. First, just assume the rules will be different everywhere. Second, build flexible systems. You can swap out one part without breaking the whole thing. Third, and this one's huge, get your legal, security, and engineering folks talking to each other from the very beginning. Fourth, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify your vendors and where you host things. And finally, number 5, you have to start valuing durability, not just pure speed or efficiency. Build things that can take a punch. All of this really points to a permanent change in how we have to think. And it makes you ask a pretty wild question about the last 30 years. Was that dream of a single global internet just a phase? And this is the final, really powerful idea from the source material. It just kind of stops you in your tracks. It challenges that core assumption we've all had. Maybe that golden era of a frictionless, borderless world, maybe that wasn't the final destination. Maybe it was just a brief historical exception. And that really leaves us with one final critical question to think about. Whether you're running a company, writing code, or just using the internet every day, you've got to ask yourself, is my company, am I, really prepared to operate in a world where the web is no longer worldwide?